"Stay in the kitchen," my husband said. "You're only embarrassing me." Those were the last words Lawrence said to me before he walked into the grandest night of my life with another woman holding his arm. I stood near the side entrance of the Elaine Culinary House and watched him laugh at something she whispered. I watched him fix his cufflink in the reflection of the glass doors. I watched him step into a room full of donors, reporters, city officials, chefs, and business leaders like he belonged at the center of it all. He did not know that less than an hour later, I would walk onto that same stage while 300 people rose to their feet. He did not know the name on the screen behind the podium would be mine. And when Lawrence finally turned around and understood who they were clapping for, I watched every bit of color leave his face. But I need to start earlier, because a public moment like that never begins in public. It begins in a quiet kitchen before sunrise, with a woman folding her panes small enough to fit inside her handbag. I woke up at 5 that morning, the way I always do before something important. The house was still dark, and the Georgia air outside the windows had that heavy softness it gets before dawn. Lawrence was asleep beside me, breathing deep, one arm thrown across his pillow, like he had never carried a worry he could not hand to someone else. I lay there for a minute and listened. Not to him, to myself. My name is Naomi Taylor. I was 48 years old then, a mother, a wife, and the founder of a place my husband still thought was my little kitchen project. That day was the opening of the Elaine Culinary House in historic Savannah. 5 years of work, 5 years of meetings, permits, financing, historic restoration, kitchen design, curriculum planning, donor calls, and sleepless nights. 5 years of people asking whether I was sure a woman my age wanted to start over with something that big. I was sure. Most days. That morning I went downstairs and made coffee I barely touched. I spread my notes across the kitchen counter, the final guest list, the seating chart, the speech I had rewritten 4 times, the donor acknowledgments, the apprenticeship roster, and the small index card where I had written the one sentence I was afraid I would forget if my nerves got the best of me. My phone buzzed. Darius Parker, our operations director, had texted, "Caterers confirmed. Mayor's office says 9:30. Press check at 10. You ready?" I typed back, "Yes." Then I stared at the word. It looked braver than I felt. I heard Lawrence on the stairs before I saw him. He came down wearing a new tuxedo, black and sharp, the kind of tuxedo a man buys when he expects cameras. He stopped in the kitchen doorway when he saw me already dressed. I had chosen a deep blue silk dress, simple but strong. My mother's pearl earrings were in my ears. My hair was pinned the way I used to wear it before years of being tired made me stop trying. Lawrence looked me over like I had walked into the wrong room. "Where do you think you're going?" I kept my hand on the coffee mug. "To the opening." He actually laughed. Not loudly. That would have been easier to fight. It was a small, easy laugh, the kind a man gives when he thinks the truth is so obvious that only a foolish woman could miss it. "Naomi, this is not some church supper," he said. "The mayor will be there. Investors, press, real people." Real people. He said it like I belonged to some other category. "I'm aware of who will be there," I said. "You're doing the menu. That's different from being on the guest list." I looked at him then. Really looked. There had been a time when Lawrence could wound me with that tone, and I would spend the rest of the day trying to prove I was not what he thought. That morning, I felt the wound, yes, but I also felt something underneath it. Something steady. "Why does it matter so much to you whether I stand in that room?" I asked. He reached for his phone. "I have a business associate coming with me." That was when I heard heels on the front porch. 3 sharp knocks. I knew before I opened the door. Valerie stood there in a silver dress that looked poured onto her, holding a small clutch and wearing the kind of smile women wear when they already know they have been discussed. She was polished, calm, and far too comfortable standing at my front door at 7 in the morning. I recognized her from the late-night texts Lawrence thought I had not seen. Not because I had gone hunting at first. I saw the first one by accident weeks earlier, when his phone lit up on the nightstand at 1:47 in the morning. "Can't wait to see you in your element." After that, I stopped being accidental. I saw enough to know her name. Valerie Shaw. Business development consultant, connected to a firm that wanted a future contract with the Culinary House, connected to my husband in ways that had nothing to do with business. Lawrence did not introduce her like a man with a wife standing 3 feet away. He only said, "Valerie knows how to carry herself at these things." There it was, not just the affair, the insult wrapped around it. "I'm still going," I said. His face changed. The soft charm slid away, and what sat underneath it was colder than anger. "Stay in the kitchen," he said. "You're only embarrassing me." Then he offered Valerie his arm and walked out my front door, leaving it open behind him as if I were something he had no reason to close. I found my daughter, Simone, sitting halfway down the stairs. She was 17 and much too good at hearing what adults wished she had missed. Her hair was pulled back, her opening day dress still covered by an old hoodie. Her eyes moved from the open door to my face. "Mom," she said softly, "are you okay?" I did not tell her everything. Not yet. There are truths children deserve, and there are truths that should not be thrown at them while they are still standing on the stairs in socks. I touched her cheek. "Today," I said, "you are going to understand why I cannot keep letting someone else decide who I am. Before I go further, tell me where you're listening from tonight. I always wonder where people are when a story like this finds them. My Aunt Estelle arrived not long after that. She was my mother's younger sister, the practical one, the one who could run a fish fry, a funeral repast, or a family argument without raising her voice. She had agreed weeks earlier to bring Simone through the side entrance before the ceremony. At the time, that was just logistics. By noon, it would matter. Before I left the house, I went to the entry table and opened the top drawer. Inside was a small velvet box. I took off my wedding ring and set it inside. I held the box for a moment, feeling its strange lightness. 16 years of marriage can become very small when you finally stop pretending it still protects you. I tucked the box into my handbag beneath my speech. Then I reached into the same drawer and took out a black leather card holder. I had not carried it in weeks. Inside were business cards, thick cream stock, plain lettering, no flourish, Naomi Taylor, founder and board chair, Elaine Culinary Foundation. Lawrence had seen those cards once. He had called them cute. I closed my hand around the card holder, looked once in the hallway mirror, and walked out. The drive into historic Savannah took about 20 minutes. I passed oak trees heavy with Spanish moss, old brick walls, iron balconies, and narrow streets I had walked 1,000 times while the building was still dust and scaffolding. My hands knew the turns by memory. At the corner of Whitaker and Perry, the old market came into view. The Elaine Culinary House stood finished at last, red brick restored to a deep, warm color, new glass catching the morning light, green awnings over the windows, and a red carpet rolled from the entrance to the curb. News vans were already parked along the street. Guests in suits and evening dresses waited near the front doors. I saw Lawrence first. He was helping Valerie out of a black town car. He leaned in close, hand at the small of her back, smiling for photographers who had no idea they were taking pictures of the beginning of the end of my marriage. I did not go to the front. I drove around to the private lot behind the building and parked in the space with my name painted on the curb. Ms. Taylor. The security guard at the back entrance, Mr. Jenkins, tipped his chin when I stepped out. "Morning, Ms. Taylor. Everybody's waiting on you." 3 ordinary words. Everybody's waiting on you. After the morning I had just lived through, those words almost made me stop walking. Inside, the building was alive. Staff moved through the halls with trays, clipboards, flower arrangements, and calm panic. The first cohort of apprentices was already in the training wing, dressed in crisp white jackets. The main reception hall smelled faintly of lemon polish, coffee, fresh bread, and the rosemary rolls my mother used to make when I was small. Darius was in the executive office when I arrived, jacket off, sleeves rolled, tablet in one hand, and radio clipped to his belt. Darius Parker had worked in hospitality operations for more than 20 years before an investor introduced us. He knew kitchens, staffing, donors, inspections, egos, and emergencies. In 2 years, he had become the person I trusted most with the day-to-day life of the building. He looked up when I came in. His eyes dropped to my bare left hand. Then he went back to business, because Darius knew when kindness meant not asking too fast. Mayor's team confirmed. Scholarship donation came in this morning. 6 figures. Anonymous. Press pool is arriving in 20. Your remarks are after Councilwoman Reed. I nodded. Routine saved me for a minute. Schedules, names, timelines, things that could be checked off. Then Darius said quietly, "You took the ring off." Lawrence brought Valerie to my house. His jaw tightened. He did what? Told me to stay in the kitchen so I wouldn't embarrass him. Darius put the tablet down. Say the word and I will have him removed before the first camera gets inside. For a second, the offer tempted me. I imagined Lawrence being walked out through the front doors in his expensive tuxedo, Valerie following behind him, both of them exposed before they ever got comfortable. It would have felt good for maybe 5 minutes. Then the story of the day would become my husband's affair instead of my mother's dream. "No," I said. "Let him stay." Darius studied my face. "Naomi, I do not need to throw him out," I said. "I need to let the truth stand where everybody can see it." Simone and Aunt Estelle arrived through the side entrance 20 minutes later. I watched Simone's face shift as staff greeted me by title. "Good morning, Ms. Taylor." "The mayor's office called for you, Ms. Taylor." "The pastry team needs your sign-off." My daughter had heard people dismiss me at home for years in little ways, not dramatic enough to call cruel, but steady enough to teach a child the wrong lesson if nobody corrected it. That morning, she saw a different version of me moving through the world. Not louder, just recognized. I took her to the training wing before the doors opened. 24 apprentices stood near the stainless steel work tables. Most were women between 40 and 60, women who had lost jobs, buried husbands, raised children, left marriages, cared for aging parents, or spent decades serving food without anyone asking what they wanted to build for themselves. One of them, Renee, took my hand in both of hers. Renee was 58. A widow, and had raised 3 children on waitress pay. She had been accepted into our pastry track on a full scholarship. "This place gave me my life back," she said. I had to look away for a moment. That was the point of all of it. Not the red carpet, not the speeches, not the cameras. This. Women standing in a kitchen and discovering they were not finished. From the second-floor window, I could see into the reception hall. Lawrence worked the room like he had built the place himself. He shook hands with developers, leaned close to investors, laughed in that smooth public way of his. I heard part of it through the hall system when a microphone test accidentally carried sound from the reception room. "My wife has been connected with the culinary side," Lawrence told someone. "I've helped her get access to the right people." I closed my eyes once. 5 years. 5 years, and he had turned my work into a favor he did for me. Valerie stood beside him, smiling like she had already found her place. I heard her tell a donor I was a consultant on the kitchen concept. Consultant. I almost laughed then. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes a lie tells you more about the liar than the truth ever could. My mind went back to the beginning. 5 years earlier, I had stood in that same building 1 week after my mother's funeral. Back then, it was not beautiful. It was a condemned old market with rotted floorboards, cracked plaster, and rain stains blooming across one corner of the ceiling. Dust had gathered in the rafters, and the city had a list of violations long enough to make any sensible person walk away. Lawrence had walked through it in his good overcoat, stepping around broken tile like the building might stain his shoes. "Sell it," he said. "The land alone could bring a couple million." No reason to get sentimental. My mother, Elaine Booker, had worked in hotel kitchens for more than 30 years. Prep cook, line cook, breakfast cook, banquet kitchen supervisor. She raised me on sore feet and early mornings. She could stretch leftovers into a meal and turn a holiday kitchen into a place where everybody felt less lonely than when they came in. She bought that old market building late in life after years of saving. Nobody in the family understood why. I did not understand until I found the notebook. It was in a desk drawer in the back office, wrapped in a dish towel. A recipe notebook, stained at the edges, with a letter tucked inside. My mother had written that she wanted the building to become a place for women who had been told their time had passed, women who needed training, work, dignity, and a second chance that did not sound like charity. She had written one sentence that became the spine of my life. If the world keeps sending women back to the kitchen, then build a kitchen big enough to set them free. I read that line standing in dust, and by the time I folded the letter, I knew I was not selling. I had managed restaurants before I left full-time work to raise Simone. I knew food costs, staffing, vendors, licensing, inspections, payroll, scheduling, and the quiet math that decides whether a place survives. I did not know historic restoration or nonprofit law, but I learned. I formed an LLC and a foundation structure through the family trust my mother had left. The building and ownership stayed protected as inherited property. Lawrence signed the acknowledgement on advice from his own lawyer without reading the whole packet. "Just paperwork," he had said, scribbling his name while watching a game on television. It was not just paperwork. 3 banks turned me down. One investor offered money if I gave up control. A contractor quit halfway through the roof restoration. The preservation board delayed us 4 months over windows. The city wanted fire suppression upgrades that nearly broke the budget. Lawrence called it my hobby. "You're playing restaurant owner," he told me once. He said it while eating food I had cooked in a house I had helped pay for. I invited him to the groundbreaking. He skipped it for a golf outing with a client. I asked him to look over early renderings. He said he trusted me with decor stuff. I told him about a donor who funded the first scholarships. He looked up from his phone long enough to say, "That's nice." Eventually, I stopped offering details, not because I was hiding, because there are only so many times you can bring your life to someone who keeps setting it down unread. About a year before the opening, Lawrence changed in a different way. His phone turned face down on every table. He came home smelling like unfamiliar perfume and expensive hotel soap. He started criticizing my clothes, my hair, my tired face, the hours I spent at the building. He told friends he was carrying the family financially, though by then the culinary house had begun paying me consulting and management fees he never bothered to ask about. I found Valerie's messages on a Thursday night when he fell asleep with his phone still glowing. I did not confront him then. I saved what I needed. I spoke to an attorney. I made a plan to wait until after the opening, because no matter what happened to my marriage, I would not let Lawrence's betrayal become the headline over my mother's name. Back in the present, Darius found me outside the training kitchen with a different look on his face. "We've got a problem," he said. I followed him into the office. He pulled up an email on his tablet. A city council member had received it less than an hour earlier. Anonymous, polished, careful. It questioned whether I had the experience and mental stability to lead the project. It hinted at mismanaged funds without evidence. It suggested Darius was the real force behind the operation and that I was being presented as a sentimental figurehead for optics. I read it twice. "Who sent it?" "Still tracing," Darius said. "But the account links back to someone inside Valerie Shaw's company." For a moment, the room narrowed. I could hear the reception noise below us. Glasses, music, the low roll of important people talking in important voices. Valerie was not just sleeping with my husband. She was trying to erase me before I ever reached the stage. I could have ended her night right there. One call to security, one word to board counsel, one quiet order, and she would have been walked out in front of every camera. Part of me wanted that. The part of me that had read late-night messages. The part that had stood in my own kitchen while Lawrence told me I was an embarrassment. The part that still had a velvet box in my handbag where my wedding ring used to be. But I looked through the glass wall at the apprentices in their white jackets. Today belonged to them. "Forward it to board counsel," I said. Quietly, "I want it reviewed before I speak, but I do not want a scandal during the opening." Darius did not like it. I could see that. "Naomi, if they are trying to damage you, we need to respond." "We will," I said, "with facts, not chaos." Downstairs, Lawrence had settled into the version of himself he liked best: charming, useful, connected. He stood near a cluster of developers with Valerie at his side. One investor, Mr. Grayson, had been with us from the first fundraising round. He was older, sharp, and not easily impressed. I heard him ask, "How do you know Miss Taylor?" Lawrence smiled. "She's my wife," he said, "but the business side is not really her strength." Mr. Grayson's expression changed just slightly. He did not correct him. He did not need to. I had walked close enough to hear every word. Lawrence turned and saw me. His face tightened. "How did you get back here?" he asked under his breath. "I have a badge." Valerie's eyes traveled over my dress, my pearls, my face. She smiled like she had expected less and was annoyed to find more. "I didn't realize kitchen staff had access to the reception floor tonight," she said. "It landed with the small circle around us. Not as a joke, as a test." Lawrence looked at me with warning in his eyes. "Naomi, step back before you embarrass yourself." I looked from him to Valerie. "Have you told anyone who I am?" "I do not have time to explain family issues right now," he said. Family issues. That was what he called standing beside his mistress in my building. Simone stood a few feet away with Aunt Estelle. She had heard enough. I saw her jaw tighten, saw her take one step forward. I touched her arm. "Not here," I said softly. Her eyes filled, not with tears exactly, but with the kind of anger a daughter feels when she realizes her mother has been smaller at home than she ever was in the world. Valerie tilted her head. "You should be grateful Lawrence brought you into rooms like this at all." I let the sentence sit. "Have you read the ownership records for this project?" I asked. For the first time all morning, her smile faltered. Lawrence stepped between us. "That's enough." "I agree," I said. He leaned close. "After tonight, you and I need to have a serious conversation about this marriage." "We do," I said. "I've already had the paperwork drawn up." He smiled then. Actually smiled. He thought I meant counseling, or maybe a separation he could manage, maybe terms that would keep his image clean and my silence convenient. "Good," he said. "I'm glad you're finally being realistic." There are moments when a person misunderstands you so completely that correcting them would be a waste of good air. I walked away. Backstage, one board member pulled me aside. His name was Philip Grant, a cautious man who cared about the foundation but feared bad press the way some people fear fire. "Naomi," he said, "until the email is fully cleared, maybe Darius should deliver the remarks tonight, just to protect the organization." For the first time that day, doubt got its hand around my throat. Not fear of Lawrence, not anymore. Fear that gossip would drown out the apprentices. Fear that my mother's name would be dragged into a mess she did not create. Fear that one anonymous email could do what 5 years of hard work had fought against. Then Simone slipped her hand into mine. She had not held my hand like that in years. "Grandma left this place to you," she said, "not because she thought it would be easy." That was all I needed. Board counsel came back 10 minutes later. The email contained false claims. The metadata showed a trail connected to Valerie's company. The matter would be handled formally after the ceremony. My place on the program stayed. The lights in the reception hall dimmed at 7. Lawrence sat in the 3rd row with Valerie beside him, one arm resting along the back of her chair. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable, like a man who had stepped into somebody else's house and already decided where to hang his coat. He turned once and saw me standing near the back. He gave me a small, condescending smile. The master of ceremonies, Councilwoman Reed, stepped to the podium. "Good evening," she said. "Tonight, we open more than a building. We open a door." She spoke about the old market, about the restoration, about workforce training, about second chances. Then she spoke about my mother, Elaine Booker, a woman who had spent more than 30 years in hotel kitchens and somehow saved enough to buy a building most people had given up on. I stood in the back and felt 5 years of pressure settle across my shoulders, then lift. Councilwoman Reed smiled. "Please join me in welcoming the woman who saved this building, the founder, majority owner, and board chair of the Elaine Culinary Foundation, Ms. Naomi Taylor." For one beat, the room went still. That kind of stillness has a sound. It is the sound of people adjusting what they thought they knew. My name appeared on the screen behind the podium. Naomi Taylor, founder, majority owner, board chair. Darius stood first, then the board, then the staff, then the 24 apprentices in their white jackets, then the donors, city officials, chefs, and reporters. Simone rose from the family row with both hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes bright. Aunt Estelle stood beside her, clapping hard enough for both my mother and herself. Lawrence did not stand right away. His hands stopped halfway together. Valerie turned to him. What did she just say? I did not stop at their row. I did not look down and smile. I did not give Lawrence a line he could later quote as cruelty. I walked past him in silence. That silence was better than any speech I could have aimed at him. By the time I reached the stage, I could see the truth working through his face. The meetings he skipped, the invitation with my name printed at the top, the documents he signed without reading, the staff calling me Ms. Taylor all evening, the badge, the executive entrance, the city officials who knew me. He had been surrounded by the truth all day. He had only refused to recognize it. I stepped behind the podium and took one breath. Then I began with my mother. Elaine Booker spent most of her life in kitchens, I said. Hotel kitchens, church kitchens, family kitchens, kitchens where the work was hard and the praise was thin. The room quieted. More than once, somebody told my mother she was just a woman in the kitchen, as if feeding people, training people, organizing people, and keeping people alive were small things. I looked out across the hall. Lawrence's head had lowered. My mother raised me in kitchens. She taught me that leadership does not always enter a room from the front. Sometimes it comes through the back door before sunrise, turns on the lights, checks the ovens, and makes sure everybody else has what they need. I did not say Lawrence's name. I did not need to. This place is named Elaine because my mother's dream was bigger than one family. She believed women deserved more than survival after loss, more than being useful until they were tired, more than being told to stay in their place. I saw Renee in the first apprentice row wiping her eyes with a folded napkin. Our first cohort has 24 apprentices, I continued. Some are returning to work after raising children. Some are rebuilding after divorce, some buried spouses, some left homes where they were not safe, some simply woke up one day and realized they were not done yet. The room was so quiet I could hear the sound system hum. This kitchen is for them. This building is for every woman who was ever told she was too old, too late, too ordinary, too tired, too invisible, or too embarrassing to stand in the room where her own future was being discussed. I paused. My index card was on the podium. I did not need it. Someone told me today that my place was in the kitchen. The room changed, not loud, not shocked, just awake. Maybe they were right, I said, because it was in a kitchen that I learned how to build something no one could take from me. I looked toward the apprentices, and now we are going to build that for other women too. The applause began in the back near the staff, then the apprentices. Then the whole room rose. Lawrence stayed seated for a few seconds too long. Valerie pulled her hand away from his arm. When he finally stood, he looked like a man clapping at his own funeral. After the speech, reporters gathered faster than I expected. Questions came from 3 directions at once. Darius moved beside me, steady as ever, guiding the press line, keeping the apprentices centered, making sure the story stayed where it belonged. Across the room, I heard Lawrence trying to get through the rope line near the stage. "I'm her husband," he said. Mr. Jenkins, the same guard from the back entrance, answered in the calmest voice in Georgia. "Sir, Ms. Taylor is working right now." I did not turn around. I did not have to. For years, Lawrence had treated my work like something that happened around the edges of his life. Now a stranger in a black suit had named it, plainly. Working. A few minutes later, Valerie's phone rang. I watched her step near the hallway with one finger pressed to her ear. At first she looked annoyed, then alert, then frightened. Her company had started its review. The anonymous email had been traced to an assistant in her department. Board counsel had notified the firm's leadership that the Culinary Foundation considered the message a false and improper attempt to interfere with a public event and potential contract process. Valerie turned toward Lawrence. Her voice carried farther than she meant it to. "You told me your wife had no real authority here." Lawrence opened his mouth. Nothing came out. One of our attorneys happened to be passing behind them and said, not unkindly, "The ownership records have been public for 3 years." That was the moment Valerie understood what I already knew. Lawrence had not been tricked. He had been careless with the truth because the truth was attached to me. Valerie left before dessert was served. She walked out alone, heels sharp against the marble floor, phone tight in her hand. Lawrence waited almost an hour outside the executive office while I finished interviews and thanked the first cohort. When I finally stepped into the hallway, he rose from a bench like a man waiting outside a principal's office. "Naomi," he said. I could have kept walking. I did not. I chose a small conference room near the administrative wing, not the reception hall, not the lobby, nowhere with cameras. I owed our marriage a conversation. I did not owe him a scene. He closed the door behind us and looked at me like I had hidden a country from him. "Why didn't you tell me?" There was real hurt in his voice that almost made me angry. "I did tell you." "Not like this." "No," I said. "You are right. Not like this. I told you in meeting invitations you ignored, in documents you signed without reading, in donor calls you talked over, in nights I came home excited and you looked at your phone until I stopped talking." He rubbed his forehead. "I did not know the scope of it." "That is exactly the problem, Lawrence. You only listened to what made you feel important." He flinched. Good. Not because I wanted to hurt him, because some truths should be felt before they are argued with. He apologized for Valerie. His voice cracked a little on her name. "It was stupid," he said. "It was selfish. I got caught up." I let that sit. "You did not get caught up," I said. "You made choices. Repeatedly. Then you brought one of those choices to my mother's building and told me to stay in the kitchen." He looked down. I reached into my handbag and placed the velvet box on the table. He knew what it was before I opened my hand. "Naomi," he whispered. "The marriage did not end this morning," I said. "It ended slowly. It ended every time you laughed at what I was building, every time you called my work a hobby, every time you let me carry the home while telling people you carried me. It ended more when you started lying. And it ended completely when you walked into tonight with another woman and expected me to disappear." I gave him my divorce attorney's card. His face changed again. He had misunderstood so much that day, and somehow this still surprised him. "Please," he said, "give me a chance." "I can forgive you one day," I said. "I believe that, but forgiveness is not the same as staying." The professional fallout did not happen all at once, because real consequences usually have paperwork. Valerie's company suspended her pending review. The affair was not the main issue, though I am sure it embarrassed them. The larger problem was the anonymous email, the conflict of interest, the attempt to damage a potential client's public event, and the fact that she had allowed personal involvement with Lawrence to bleed into business. Her firm withdrew from talks about Phase 2 of the project. Lawrence lost more than Valerie that night. People had seen him lie about his role. They had seen him dismiss me minutes before my title was announced. A few clients quietly stepped back. One partnership he had expected to close by the end of the quarter went cold. The promotion he had been circling for months did not happen. I did not make one phone call to punish him. I did not need to. The truth had entered the room with its own shoes on. Simone found out about the affair in pieces. I did not sit her down and pour every ugly detail into her lap. She was 17, not 5. She saw enough, heard enough, and asked enough to understand. She did not scream at Lawrence. That would have been easier for him. Instead, 1 week after the opening, she asked him a question in our living room while I stood near the fireplace holding a laundry basket I had forgotten to put down. "Did you ever wonder why Mom stopped telling you things?" Lawrence had no answer. I did not stop him from seeing his daughter. I also did not ask her to forgive him before she was ready. That was not mine to manage. 3 weeks later, Lawrence sent me a message. "I'm not asking you to come back. I just want one conversation where I tell the truth without protecting myself." I looked at that message for a long time. Part of me did not want to give him even that. Another part of me knew that ending a marriage with dignity sometimes means hearing the truth after it is too late to save anything. We met at a small coffee shop near Forsyth Park. He was already there when I arrived, sitting near the window, no suit, no polish, both hands wrapped around a paper cup. He looked tired in a way I had never seen, not performative tired, humbled tired. "I was jealous of you," he said after a while. I did not respond. "Not at first," he said. "At first I thought it was sweet. Your mother's building, your idea. Then people started taking you seriously, and I kept telling myself it was because of Darius, or the donors, or the sentimental angle." Anything but you. It was the first honest thing he had said in a long time. "Valerie made me feel important," he continued. "She liked the version of me I wanted to be, status, deals, access. I did not have to look at myself around her." "That is not love," I said. "No," he said, "it wasn't." He did not ask me to come back. Not that day. I was grateful for that. I told him I had already forgiven enough to stop carrying the sharpest part of the anger, but the divorce would continue. "Forgiveness is mine," I said. "Reconciliation would have required trust. You broke that." He nodded. The divorce was not pretty, but it was cleaner than I expected. The culinary house remained mine, protected through my mother's structure and the documents Lawrence had signed years earlier. We sold the house we had shared and divided the actual marital assets fairly. We agreed not to use Simone as a messenger. We agreed not to speak badly about each other in front of her. We agreed to attend counseling with her if she asked. Lawrence did begin showing up differently for Simone. Small things at first. On time for dinner, phone put away at her school events, no canceled plans for last-minute work drinks, no pushing her to forgive him just because he was uncomfortable with the distance. That mattered. It did not repair our marriage, but it helped protect our daughter from becoming the place where our pain went to live. A year passed faster than I expected. The Elaine Culinary House grew in the steady way things grow when they are rooted in something real. Our apprenticeship program expanded from 24 women to 60 a year. Renee from the first cohort opened a small bakery downtown, and I cried when she sent me a photo of her storefront with her name painted over the door. Another apprentice became a restaurant manager across town. One started a catering company with her sister. 2 went back to school for hospitality degrees. The scholarship fund carried my mother's name, and every time I saw it printed on a program, I felt like Elaine Booker had finally stepped into the room the world owed her. That summer, Simone applied for our baking apprenticeship. I made her go through the same application process as everybody else. Written form, interview, skills assessment, no shortcuts. "You're really making your own daughter interview?" Aunt Estelle asked. "Absolutely," I said. Simone got in on merit. I do not think I have ever been prouder. At the 1-year anniversary celebration, I was asked to speak again. Lawrence came and sat toward the back, not as my husband, as Simone's father. He did not approach the press. He did not tell anyone he helped build the place. He did not stand near donors hoping to be mistaken for a man with influence. He sat quietly and clapped. Afterward, he found me near the side exit. "I spent years thinking success meant being seen," he said. "You were right. It starts with seeing someone else." "Remember that with Simone," I said. "I will." For once, I believed him. There was no reunion, no music, no sudden healing that wiped the past clean, just 2 people who could finally tell the truth because there was nothing left to perform. Later that night, after the last guests had gone and the chairs had been stacked, I walked into the main kitchen alone. The lights over the prep tables were low. The big mixers were silent. A faint smell of sugar, yeast, and lemon cleaner hung in the air. Near the pass, my mother's photograph watched over the room, her smile small and knowing. Simone found me there a few minutes later. "Do you ever regret not selling it?" she asked. I looked around at the stainless steel tables, the clean knives on magnetic strips, the rows of labeled flour bins, the ovens still warm from the anniversary desserts. "There were days I was scared I had made the wrong choice," I said. "But I never regretted believing my life could be bigger than someone else's opinion of it." She leaned her shoulder against mine. For years I thought I needed Lawrence to see me clearly. I thought if I explained enough, worked hard enough, stayed patient enough, one day he would look up and understand who I was. But the stage that night was never really about him. It was for my mother, for my daughter, for Renee and the women in white jackets, for every person who had ever been told to stay in a place someone else chose for them. Lawrence was right about one thing. My place was in the kitchen, the one I built, the one I own, the one where women are still walking in tired and walking out with their names stitched on jackets, their hands steady, and their lives opening again. I did not need to embarrass him. I needed to stop making myself smaller so he could feel tall. Sometimes justice does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it is a woman stepping onto a stage, letting the truth introduce her, and then going back to the kitchen because this time the kitchen belongs to her. If this story moved something in you, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if you have ever had to stop shrinking so someone else could feel bigger, like, share, and subscribe so you do not miss the next story.